Jai Gopi Chanavallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Chanavallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Chanavallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottara Shatati Srimad Abhayacharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottara Shatati Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Gauri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Oh, glorious to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Oh, glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter entitled A Resident of Vrindavan. Back in the 1930s, the Nehru family had bought their medicines from Abhay's Prayag pharmacy, and Abhay now appealed to Pandit Nehru as an old friend from Allahabad. Just as Abhay had requested Mahatma Gandhi, he requested Nehru to leave his political responsibilities, quote, and as a popular gentleman of the world, engage the rest of your life in this organized spiritual movement to make a real adjustment of Western material science combined with Indian way of spiritual realization, end quote. As with his letter to Gandhi, his letter to Nehru went unanswered. Among Abhay's former Bombay contacts was Mr. Harbans Lal, a landlord who had once assured Abhay that he would provide him lodging whenever he needed. In the summer of 1958, Abhay went to call on Mr. Harbans Lal, only to find that he had gone to the west. When Abhay learned that Mr. Harbans Lal was traveling not only on business, but on a cultural mission, his imagination seized on the idea of an Indian on a cultural mission in the West. He wrote to Mr. Harbans Lal asking for a place to stay, but also presenting his own cultural mission. Abhay knew that many Westerners respected Indian culture. He had heard from his German godbrother that although Indians who went to the West, especially to Germany, were well received, they were sometimes tested on their knowledge of Indian culture. So Abhay advised Mr. Harbans Lal to teach the real conclusion of Indian culture as he traveled. I think that people need this Indian message in this hour of necessity when the atomic bomb is hovering over the head of the human society. Please therefore begin the activities for the benefit of all people in the foreign countries since you have gone there. Clearly, Abai would have liked to have gone himself. Abai also reminded Mr. Harbanslau of his promise to provide him with an apartment. Quote, I'm passing my days in Bombay in great inconvenience for want of a suitable residential place. But the letter never caught up with the turn, Mr. Harbanslau. Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita Ki Jai. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 22, entitled Prithu Maharaj's Meeting with the Four Kumars. And it's text 36. Vare vare chaye bhava guna vyati karadanu natisham vidyate kshemam isha vidvam sita shisham. Vare vare chaye bhava guna vyati karadanu natisham vidyate kshemam isha vidvam sita shisham. Vare vare chaye bhava guna vyati karadanu natisham vidyate kshemam isha vidvam shita shisham. Hare chaye bhava vyati karadanu natesham vidyate kshemam ashisham. Hare chaye bhava karadanu natesham vidyate kshemam isha vidvam sita shisham. Mataji. Natesham vidyate kshemam isha vidvam sita shisham. Hare, in the higher status of life. Avare, in the lower status of life. Cha, and. Ye, all those. Bhava, conceptions. Guna, material qualities. Vyatikarat, by interaction. Anu, following. Na, never. Tesham, of them. Vidyate, exist. Shemam, correction. Isha, the Supreme Lord. Vidvamsita, destroyed. Ashisham, of the blessings. Translation. It is quite a long purport, just so we know. We accept as blessings different statuses of higher life, distinguishing them from lower statuses of life. Sorry, let me say that again. We accept as blessings different states of life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. But we should know that such distinctions exist only in relation to the interchange of the modes of material nature. Actually, these states of life have no permanent existence, or all of them will be destroyed by the Supreme.
Breakfast, okay?
Purport. In our material existence, we accept a higher form of life as a blessing and a lower form as a curse. This distinction of higher and lower only exists as long as the different material qualities or gunas interact. In other words, by our good activities, we are elevated to the higher planetary systems or to a standard of life, or to a higher standard of life, good education, bodily beauty, etc. These are the results of pious activities. Similarly, by impious activities, we remain illiterate, get ugly bodies, a poor standard of living, etc. But all these different states of life are under the laws of material nature through the interaction of the qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. However, all these qualities will cease to act at the time of the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord therefore says in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartino juna mam upeja tu konteya puna janma navidyate. Even though we elevate ourselves to the highest planetary system by scientific advancement of knowledge or by the religious principles of life, great sacrifices and fruitive activities, at the time of dissolution, these higher planetary systems and life on them will be destroyed. In this verse, the words Isha Vidvamsi Shisham indicate that all such blessings will be destroyed by the Supreme Controller. We will not be protected. Our bodies, either in this planet or in another planet, will be destroyed. And again, we will have to remain for millions of years in an unconscious state within the body of Mahavishnu. And again, when the creation is manifested, we have to take birth in different species of life and begin our activities. Therefore, we should not be satisfied simply by a promotion to the higher planetary systems. We should try to get out of the material cosmic manifestation, go to the spiritual world, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our highest achievement. We should not be attracted by anything material, higher or lower, but should consider them all on the same level. Our real engagement should be in inquiring about the real purpose of life and rendering devotional service to the Lord. Thus we will be eternally blessed in our spiritual activities, full of knowledge and bliss. Regulated human civilization promotes dharma, artha, karma, and moksha. In human society, there must be religion. Without religion, human society is only animal society. Economic development and sense gratification must be based on religious principles. When religion, economic development, and sense gratification are adjusted, liberation from this material birth, death, old age, and disease is assured. In the present age of Kali, however, There is no question of religion and liberation. People have taken interest only in economic development and sense gratification. Therefore, despite sufficient economic developments all over the world, dealings in human society have become almost animalistic. When everything becomes grossly animalistic, dissolution takes place. This dissolution is to be accepted as Isha Vidvam Sita Shisham. The Lord's so-called blessings of economic developments and sense gratification will be conclusively dissolved by destruction. At the end of this Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as the incarnation of Kalki, and his only business will be to kill all human beings on the surface of the globe. After that killing, another golden age will begin. We should therefore know that our material activities are just like childish play. Children may play on the beach, and the father will sit and watch this childish play. The construction of buildings with sand, the construction of walls, and so many things. But finally, the father will ask the children to come home. Then everything is destroyed. Persons who are too much addicted to the childish activities of economic development and sense gratification are sometimes especially favored by the Lord when he destroys their construction of these things. It is said by the Lord, Yasyaham anugrinami harishe tattanam shanai. The Lord told Yudhishthira Maharaja that his special favor is shown to his devotee when he takes away all the devotee's material opulences. Generally, therefore, it is experienced that Vaishnavas are not very opulent in the material sense. When a Vaishnava, pure devotee, tries to be materially opulent and at the same time desires to serve the Supreme Lord, his devotional service is checked. The Lord, in order to show him a special favor, destroys his so-called economic development and material opulences. Thus the devotee, being frustrated in his repeated attempts at economic development, ultimately takes solid shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. This kind of action may also be accepted as Isha Vidvam Sita Shisham, whereby the Lord destroys one's material opulences, but enriches one in spiritual understanding. In the course of our preaching work, we sometimes see that materialistic persons come to us and offer their obeisances to take blessings, which means they want more and more material opulences. If such material opulences are checked, such persons are no longer interested in offering obeisances to the devotees. Such materialistic persons are always concerned about their economic development. They offer obeisances to saintly persons or the Supreme Lord and give something in charity for preaching work with a view that they will be rewarded with further economic development. However, when one is sincere in his devotional service, the Lord obliges the devotee to give up his material developments and completely surrender unto him. Because the Lord does not give blessings of material opulence to his devotee, people are afraid of worshipping Lord Vishnu because they see that the Vaishnavas, who are worshippers of Lord Vishnu, are poor in superficial material opulences. Such materialistic persons, however, get immense opportunity for economic developments by worshipping Lord Shiva. For Lord Shiva is the husband of the goddess Durga, the proprietor of this universe. By the grace of Lord Shiva, the devotee gets the opportunity to be blessed by the goddess Durga. Ravana, for example, was a great worshipper and devotee of Lord Shiva, and in return he got all the blessings of goddess Durga. so much so that his whole kingdom was constructed of golden buildings. In Brazil, in this present age, huge quantities of gold have been found, and from historical references in the Puranas, we can guess safely that this was Ravana's kingdom. This kingdom, however, was destroyed by Lord Ramachandra. By studying such incidents, we can understand the full meaning of Isha Vidvamsita Shisham. The Lord does not bestow material blessings upon the devotees, for they may be entrapped again in this material world by continuous birth, death, old age, and disease. Due to materialistic opulences, persons like Ravana become puffed up for sense gratification. Ravana even dared kidnap Sita, who was both the wife of Lord Ramachandra and the goddess of fortune, thinking that he would be able to enjoy the pleasure potency of the Lord. But actually, by such action, Ravana became Vidvamsita, or ruined. At the present moment, human civilization is too much attached to economic development and sense gratification, and is therefore nearing the path of ruination. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who can fulfill the desires of everyone just like desire trees, and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Chaitanya Swamini Namane Namami Bhakti Chaitanyam Prabhupada Nasevanam Shri Vrajadana Mahatmya Pradashakam Kripanavam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastucha Deshatane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I think something on the garland might have been affecting my throat, so I took it off. So just like to request the blessings of Jai Shri Prabhu and his wife Vimla, as well as all other senior devotees present. So please help me to say something of value, and I'm here to simply give you all pleasure by reciting the glories of the Lord, not instruct you in any way. So this it's a long purport, and there's a lot in it. Srila Prabhupada discusses different things in it, different parts of the purport. So the purport begins by explaining that whatever situation we're in this material world is temporary. Srila Prabhupada mentions how, well, the verse mentions as well how we have sometimes we accept like a higher state of life as like a blessing, and we distinguish that from a lower state of life. The blessings due to good karma would be like beautiful body, high birth, wealth, good education, all these sort of things. Often you'll find them. Often you'll find they come together, like a package. See, persons have the saying they have it all, have it all. So you often see it together like that. Beauty, at the same time, wealth, and all these sort of things. And then there's the lower states of life where less beauty and less intelligence, not properly educated, poverty, and they often also come together in a package. Of course, it can be mixed a lot of the time. Yeah, well, sometimes it can be mixed, but generally it comes like that together. So, but we see the one is a blessing and the other is a curse. But the verse is saying that we shouldn't really make such distinctions. I mean, we shouldn't take those distinctions too seriously, because in any event, and after all, it's all going to be, it's all just temporary, and it will be annihilated at the time of cosmic annihilation. Of course, we can see even in between that these things are temporary. We're in this body just for a few years, and then we change to another body, and the next body that we may have a different situation. Yeah. So we can see how temporary they are. But Srila Prabhupada and the verse is trying to give us like a very big perspective, like an ultimate perspective, which often we lose sight of, especially in this age. We just have no idea about these things. But it's speaking about like at the end of Lord Brahma's lifetime. Actually, there's destructions take place at the end of Lord Brahma's day, every day. But that's only a certain part of the universe, whereas the higher planets will still remain, including Lord Brahma's planetary system, Satyaloka. Yeah, I don't want to get too technical into it, but the basic point is that Srila Prabhupada is referring here to, and the verse is referring to, at the end of Lord Brahma's lifetime, when even Lord Brahma's planet, and it all becomes destroyed. So the point is that these things are all temporary, and when Lord Brahma's lifetime is over and everything is destroyed, then we all enter into Mahavishnu, and we're there for millions and millions of years, just in like a deep sleep, a state of like an unconscious state, deep sleep. So therefore, these higher and lower forms of life, we shouldn't take them too seriously, and we shouldn't try to get a higher status of life or avoid the lower status of life. That's the basic point. Our aim should be rather to get out of the material world altogether, rather than try to adjust things in the material world. We should try to get out. And sometimes the examples given of a prison house, like in the prison house, some prisoners are in a good part of the prison due to good behavior. Nelson Mandela, for example, many of you will know Nelson Mandela in South Africa. He was, due to good behavior and also because he was more like a political prisoner than a criminal, so he was in a good part of the prison. And he had his own cottage and all that sort of thing. It was quite, like a nice setup. And he had special access to the library and all that sort of thing. And then there were prisoners who were in really horrible situations, like heavy criminals, and they were sharing cells with all these gang members and so on. So the prisoner who's in the bad part of the prison might be thinking, "Oh, I wish I could be like Nelson Mandela and just be in that in that cottage there, or peaceful and having a good time." Apparently having a good time, but that's not what they should be aspiring for. They should be aspiring to get out of the prison. Yeah, so there's another story Srila Prabhupada tells, like a Bengali proverb, you could say, that there's one boy who his work is that he takes boats across perhaps it was the Ganges River or just some river. He has to take the boat across. And while he's taking the boat across, he has to walk on all these sharp stones on the riverbed. And so he's thinking, one day if I get if I win the lotto or whatever, one if I get lots of money, what I'll do is I'll put cushions all over this riverbed. Nice. I'll buy all these soft cushions with all that money and put it on the riverbed so that I can walk very comfortably on these soft cushions over the river as I'm taking the boats across. So of course we're hearing this and we're thinking, if you have all that money, why would you still be taking boats across the river? That's the idea. So that's sort of like our material, our desire to adjust material circumstances to something better than what we have. I wish I would have a more beautiful body or more wealth or nice home and all these things. This is sort of like that boy or like that prisoner. It's trying to make adjustments to a situation which is in and of itself inauspicious. To be in a prison house is inauspicious. You should try to get out. So in the same way, to be in a place where we constantly undergoing birth and death is in itself inauspicious. We should try to get out of the material world altogether, rather than aspire for a higher state of life, which is just temporary. So it's described that the creation now is unmanifest. It's all gone into the body of Mahavishnu. And it's there for millions of years. And then after some time, Lord Mahavishnu, being merciful, he desires again to create the cosmic manifestation. In order to give and why does he do this? It's an important question. Why does he again allow the cosmic manifestation to be created? So the reason is that he wants to give the living entities another chance to get out of material existence. So that's really important. As Srila Prabhupada refers to in the purport, there are 4 goals in human life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But actually, the actual goal is liberation from material existence. That is why Lord Mahavishnu has created this material world, is that we can, in a certain sense you could say, that the purpose of the material world is to get out of the material world. You could say it like, see it in that way. Yeah. So therefore, the actual goal is liberation. That's why the material world has been created. And the other 3, dharma, artha, and kama, are therefore, you could say, servants of liberation. They are like meant to assist us in the ultimate goal of becoming liberated. So the living entity can't just or you could say won't just immediately aspire for liberation, because he has come here with a desire to enjoy sense gratification. He has come here with desires to enjoy and control separately from the Supreme Lord. That's after all why he's in the material world. So therefore, you can't just have moksha, you have to have karma then as a part of the package. Karma means sense gratification. And in order for there to be karma, sense gratification, you need to have facilities, you need to have resources, and therefore artha, economic development, is required. Resources include things like food, for example, food and money and so on. And in order to get these things, in order to get the resources, you need to perform dharma or religious activities. And that is because these resources, we are actually dependent on demigods and ultimately the Supreme Lord for receiving these things. It's not that like food and all these things is just growing automatically or happening automatically. It's happening by the mercy of the Supreme Lord through the agents of the demigods, and we are dependent on them to receive these things. So there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna himself explains this in the 3rd chapter text. It says text 11. Text 10. Chapter 3, text 10. Sahayagya praja srishtva puro vacha prajapati anena prasavishyadvam esha vos dvishta kama duk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yagya, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." The next verse. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yagya, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Yeah, so here we can see it's very clearly explained. So the demigods are providing these things for us, but with the purpose that we will use them to ultimately achieve liberation from material existence. They're not providing them for us to simply take, enjoy, and exploit, and just waste our life in that way, without trying to attain self-realization and God realization. And so I can give an analogy in this regard. Someone may be studying at the university. I think many of us have been in this circumstance where we're studying at university, or know persons who have studied at university. And while studying, at least in many cases, they're like away from home. So they'll go to another country. Persons from India often will come here, or from some other country, and they're studying here in New Zealand. Or you may be in another city, for example. Like I grew up in a small town. So to study, I had to go to Cape Town, a big city. And there I was alone there. So obviously I had to get a place to rent, and I had to buy food for myself. And it was partly the government, but partly my parents that were providing money for this. So that's often the case, that the parents are providing for their child so they can study at the university and get a good job and progress in life. But what if What if the child just uses the money just to party and maybe do drugs and all these things and completely neglects his study? How would the parents feel then? Yeah, they'd be very upset, they wouldn't be happy, and it just wouldn't be the right thing to do. And in fact, there's a good chance they would actually cut off the funds, the funding. Yeah, they would stop giving the money because it's been used for the wrong purpose. So in the same way, so many things, just the air we breathe in, the sunlight, the food we eat in, the milk we drink in, all these things are being provided actually by the demigods, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, in order that we can use this human form of life to attain self-realization and God-realization and get out of material existence. That's why they're providing these things. And therefore, we're meant to perform sacrifice in order to please them. And we're meant to use this human form of life to ultimately attain liberation. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport here that unfortunately today, people have neglected religion. So they're no longer interested in being religious. They're just focusing on economic development and sense gratification. And therefore, naturally, there's going to be like severe reactions for this because people have become basically thieves. They're just using it in the wrong way, not giving anything back, completely neglecting religion and God, and that way just making a big mess of their human form of life. So and people have also lost touch with this idea that people don't realize they're dependent on the demigods or the Supreme Lord to receive these things. People think, due to a large extent, due to the propaganda of modern materialistic scientists, atheistic scientists, and so on, like who have given theories like the theory of evolution and so on, and it's all sort of in the schools and just everywhere. People just think in this way. So people no longer think that they're dependent on anyone for the necessities of life. And people are even losing sight of the fact that they're dependent on nature for these things. Just like, for example, where do vegetables come from? Where do vegetables come from? Come from countdown, right? It's our basic experience. That's just how we get paid at the end of the week. We've got a countdown. We buy the vegetables. That just becomes subconsciously how we think. But some vegetables come from pack and save. They don't all come from countdown. Some come from pack and save. So that's why we totally lose touch with where these things actually come from. And like milk, for example, also comes just from the supermarkets. So we've lost touch with the fact that we're indebted to cows for providing this milk. People will buy the milk. You'll see in a shopping trolley, got the milk there, and they got the beef next to the milk. So people they just can't even think, that what they're actually doing. And it's all just packaged so nicely, and it just looks like it's all good, like it's all okay. So it's a very unfortunate situation we're in currently, that what to speak of recognizing the person, the supreme controller behind nature. People have even lost touch with the fact that they're dependent on nature itself. And the idea of liberation from material existence, well, Srila Prabhupada elsewhere explains that people think that this is like fantasy these days, like the idea of liberation, the idea of having, like, living eternally, not having to die, living in a way that you don't have to experience birth and death. This is thought of as being like mythology or some fantasy. Um, and so therefore liberation from material existence is also another thing that's just completely neglected in this modern so-called human society. And so it's just the middle two that are focused on, as Prabhupada is pointing out here in the purport. It's just economic developments. Just make money and enjoy your senses. That's basically it. So what to speak of becoming religious or getting out of material existence? The real goal actually of life, Lord Chaitanya has explained, is beyond just getting out of material existence even. And that is explained in the, there's a commentary on the Chaitanya Charitamrita called Chaitanya Manjusa. I'm not sure the author, but in there it's stated that Lord Chaitanya has said, Prema Umarta Mahan. I think that's quite a well-known statement actually, that love of Krishna is the highest goal of life. That's actually the real goal. And that love of Krishna is beyond even liberation from material existence. So people do not even aspire for liberation from material existence. What to speak of aspiring for this highest goal of life in the current day and age. So therefore, it is so important, the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so essential for human society, because it's given people this highest goal, this love of Krishna. It's given them access to that right from the start, even if they're not religious or aspiring for liberation, but it's given them, this the most fallen people, immediate access to Krishna Prema through the process of chanting the holy name, congregational chanting of the holy name. And through this process, people can immediately get tangible experience of the spiritual reality, that we're not the body, we're the soul, and they can get a taste for love of Krishna. And also scientific knowledge of, so not just, so the knowledge is given there in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and in the process to experience and realize the knowledge is given there in the form of chanting the holy name and engage in devotional service. So that's it's like the only hope for human society in this very dark day and age that we're currently in Kali Yuga. So that's why the devotees are working so hard to give themselves Krishna consciousness and trying to give this process of Krishna consciousness to others. So I am aware that I've covered 2/3 of the purport, but I think it's a lot to sort of take in, and I don't want to make the class too long either, so we'll end there and ask if you have any comments or questions. Oh, it's a good question, yeah. Well, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, we should try to get out of the material cosmic manifestation, go to the spiritual world, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our highest achievement. So, and as Lord Chaitanya says, that prema pramartha mahan, that love of Krishna is the ultimate, the real goal of life. But it is true that there's different levels of liberation. And, you know, Krishna, Vedascha sarve ham eva vidya vedantakrit vedavid eva jaham. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he is the compiler of the Vedas, actually. And it's by all the Vedas, it's Krishna that is to be known. So obviously Krishna has that in mind as the ultimate goal, to attain love for him and become his pure devotee. Because that is our natural position. That's, you know, as Lord Chaitanya says, Jivera Sarupahaya Krishnera Nityadasa. The Sarup, the actual constitutional position of the living entity, his natural position, is that he's the eternal servant of Krishna. But yeah, as we mentioned, the living entities come to this material world with motivations that they're envious of Krishna, that we're envious of Krishna. That's why we're here in this material world. And so they have different, you know, sort of desires and so on, and in different inclinations. And so at the very least, moksha, impersonal liberation, is like a beginning step, you could say. Now, we should not confuse this impersonal liberation with what is currently propounded by the Mayavadi philosophers, beginning from the time of since Shankaracharya has come. That was a specific mission that Lord Shiva was given, but it has a very destructive effect on human society, on people's spiritual lives. But prior to that, when it's referred to moksha, liberation from material existence, aside from that whole sort of basically cheating system, that horrible system Shankaracharya has created, there was just the idea of impersonal liberation, that it's sort of like, to help us understand, you know how some people are aware of the Supreme Lord, and even they may be aware of devotional service, yet still they approach the Supreme Lord for material desires, and that's just sort of like their main goal, still, is material desires and material enjoyment, even though they're aware of the fact that there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the same way, some persons are one step beyond that, that their desire, their main aim and desire is liberation from material existence, attaining Brahman, even though they may be aware and they're not offensive to the personality of Godhead, but they're just, this is not their focus, main desire. Yeah. I just get, it is a very nice example, the four Kumars, such a fascinating example. Four Kumars were from the start, from the time they were born, very early on in this universe, they were liberated. And it's described, I've heard a description that they heard many different, they heard about karma, they heard about jnana, they heard about bhakti from different great personalities in the universe, like Narada Muni, for example, telling them about bhakti. But the thing which really sort of stuck with them and which really connected with them was the jnana process and Brahman realization. And so they remained fixed in that. But because they're just no interest in karma at all, and they could see right through it, the whole thing of trying to enjoy the material world. They could just see that that's just a ridiculous idea with no hope in it at all. But because they had heard about bhakti and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was a little bit of curiosity in them about it. although it wasn't their main focus. And that is why they went to Vaikuntha to meet the Supreme Lord. Not that they could enter as like going back to Godhead, but the Lord does allow sages and so on to sometimes enter, for some time, and also just for the entertainment sometimes of the residents of the spiritual world. So when the whole, I won't go to the whole pastime of Jai and Vijay and so on, but the basic point is that at some point while this was happening, they were going to Vaikuntha. The Supreme Lord came, and they saw the Supreme Lord, and they smelled the tulsi mixed with sandalwood paste on the pasted on the feet of the Lord, and they saw the form of the Lord, and that their minds then became attracted to the devotional service of the Lord, and they then entered into the stage of pure devotional service, became pure devotees. Yeah. So you see how it's working. So therefore, this Brahman realization, this liberation from material existence and attaining Brahman, it's like a first step. Because the living entity may still have envy of the Supreme Lord. He may not be willing to fully surrender to the Supreme Lord, but it's a step forward for him. And then after that, there's the 5 kinds of liberation. Attaining the same form as the Lord, Sarupya; attaining the same planet as the Lord, Salokya; attaining the same opulences as the Lord, Sarshti; and attaining constant association with the Lord. I think. Anybody remember the other 2? Opulences, yeah. Samipya, okay. So it's the form of the Lord, same planet as the Lord, opulences as the Lord. Yeah. I think, yeah, association of the Lord, yeah. All right, okay, so those are the 4. Then the Sayuja is the one we just mentioned before, Moksha, attaining Brahman. So there's 4 personal forms of liberation and 1 impersonal. So you've got the impersonal, then you've got the 4 personal. Then beyond that even is Prema Pumarta Mahan. That's what Lord Chaitanya is saying, that beyond even that liberation of actually going back to Godhead is pure love of Krishna. And in that state of pure love of Krishna, the devotee, he is willing to go anywhere. And well, Lord Kapila explains in the 3rd canto that one who is situated in pure love of Krishna, he doesn't even accept the other 4. It doesn't mean he specifically rejects them. It's just that he just wants to serve the Lord. He's not after those 4. The Lord wants, he'll take. If he doesn't want, he's happy to remain in the material world. That is pure love of Krishna. That is the what Lord Chaitanya is offering. So that is what Krishna wants of all of us, because Krishna understands these things. But the other things are there. It's just to sort of help the living entity gradually come there. Yeah, is that okay? Yes. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, it's a good question. Yeah. Um, try my best to answer this authoritatively now. Yeah, yeah. So you're saying it's a guess, but safely guess. Yeah, yeah. Um, I'll, I'll first answer in, I'll first mention one or two things about what you're saying about Brazil and so on. I was a bit confused by that. I sort of understood that to be Ravana's brother's kingdom. That's what I'd heard. There's mention of his brother having his kingdom in Brazil. Um, and there were tunnels. The other purport in Bhagavad Prabhupada mentions how there's long tunnels. There's so many tunnels there or something like that, like old tunnels. And then there's a tunnel going under right from there all the way through to India. Um, yeah. And I think there's mention of something like that in the Ramayana or the Puranas or something of these tunnels. So I'm just mentioning that so you know it's a little bit more complex than what we've seen in the purport. There's a bit more to it than that, which often is the case. um, and you know we get these images of that bridge, satellite images of the bridge going to Lanka. I always understood it to be in Lanka, but, you know, Sri Lanka or whatever. Um, so it may just be a little bit more complicated than what Prophet mentioned. He may not be given the full picture in the purport. But then to answer your question generally, Srila Prabhupada, well, let me put it this way. Not so long ago, I heard my Guru Maharaj was given a lecture. And in the lecture, he said something. It was something like he was recalling some particular pastime. I wish I could remember the pastime now, but anyway, my Kali Yuga memory. But he recalled it incorrectly. He made a mistake in his description of like a clear, definite mistake, definitely 100% a mistake. And now the thing is that that's not actually a mistake. Like what he said was actually perfect. Although it seemed like there was a mistake, what he said was actually 100%, 180% perfect. So how is that? Because whatever he was speaking was purely for the pleasure of Krishna. It was spoken 100% in pure devotional service, and therefore it is perfect. Whereas me, if I had recited that pastime perfectly and got all the details correct, it wouldn't have been perfect because I'm not a pure devotee. I would have been speaking the pastime with mixed motives, and I wouldn't be saying it purely for Krishna's pleasure. So perfection means to be acting in pure devotional service. Material sort of correctness or incorrectness is very inconsequential, actually, in the bigger picture. So we should always view Srila Prabhupada in that sense, that he's a pure devotee. Whatever he's saying is actually perfect because it's purely for Krishna's pleasure. That's what makes perfection. Otherwise, what's the use of some material details? It has actually no meaning at all. Like we read it in this verse, it's all this coming and going, being destroyed and created. So, so even if, like, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would, he would sort of just make suggestions of things, or maybe this, or maybe that, or, that sort of thing. But we sort of just, we don't need to get into it in too much detail or sort of take it too seriously. The main thing is, pure devotional service and what Srila Prabhupada's given, transcendental knowledge. Having said that, we shouldn't underestimate Srila Prabhupada's position. That Krishna is directly telling him at least what he needs to know about. Like, here's another example. Someone once asked Srila Prabhupada, do you know everything? And he said, yes, I know everything because I know Krishna, and Krishna tells me. I know Krishna and Krishna tells me, and Krishna knows everything. Yeah. Yeah. So, but it may not be like that. Krishna has to now tell Srila Prabhupada every single little material detail, but every little silly thing, Like once someone asked Srila Prabhupada, do you know everything? So Srila Prabhupada said, yes, because I know Krishna. Then they said, well, if that's the case, how many windows are there in the Empire State Building? This huge building with thousands of windows. And Srila Prabhupada, just so expert, he replied, how many drops of water are there in a mirage? He used to say mirage. Mirage. How many drops of water are there in a mirage? What a response. That's amazing. But it's not just poetic, it really hits the nail on the head. That what is the use really? Or just temporary. Like you get these persons, they get really into like science and mathematics, and their heads get so full of all these these facts and things, and sometimes they actually just lose their mind. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. Like they actually just completely go mad because they got all these silly little facts and things about this and that, and they're just overloaded with it, and they just can't like function anymore. So just not overburden Prabhupada with unnecessary mundane facts about things. So yeah, Srila Prabhupada is just suggesting that we can safely guess. What he's doing is he's referring to the previous Acharya's commentary, and they're referring to the Puranas in this particular case. Yeah. Try my best to answer that, Prabhu. That's a hard one. But some of our, would you like to add to that? Or I could repeat it if you wanted to. Yeah. Here's quoting the verse, Yasadeva Parabhaktir, so on and so that one who has implicit faith in the Supreme Lord and the Spiritual Master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed to him within his heart. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. 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 And whatever we need to know will be revealed to us by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. What Prabhu was saying. Any other comments or questions? That's good timing. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.